Hi, and welcome to the WGU Software Workshop, starting a project in IntelliJ with Java FX11. My name is Mark Kincaid. I'm a course instructor here at WGU, and today's objective is to build a Java FX11 application with one button and one label. Now, in Java JDK 8, the Java FX library was included in the JDK installation. So you did not have to do anything extra to get Java FX into your program. However, with JDK 11, now they have separated the FX jar libraries from the regular JDK 11. And therefore, we have to include it as a set of libraries in our project in order to run it properly. So let's get started. So I am assuming that you have Java FX11 and the JDK 11 on your machine somewhere. And we're going to need to access the directory where the Java FX11 installation is. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create an FX project in IntelliJ. Then we're going to make sure that this the IntelliJ-based global variable path to FX is set. And we're going to do this because this makes it easier for you to transfer your project to the evaluators for them to set it, because they'll also have this common variable set. And in order to do that, we'll do File Settings and look at the path variables. Then we'll add the live directory for the Java FX installation to the project so that you can link up to the jars. And then we're going to add the virtual machine options to the main configuration so that the main class will be able to invoke the Java FX libraries. And here's the actual command here, and that we're going to put in there. And you note there are no spaces after the commas. Then we're going to make the controller implement initializable. This is important because Java FX will only call the controller's initialize method if we have, in fact, stated that it's implementing the initializable interface, and the interface only has initialize in it. Then we're going to do a test run to make sure that it actually at least compiles and runs. Then we're going to add a button and a label to our GUI. And then we're going to add a button handler so we know when the users have touched the button. And we're going to add a label FX ID so that we in the program can touch the label. And then we're going to write some code to do those two things, and that will be it. So we're going to start with looking at our IntelliJ, and the first thing we're going to do, step one, is we're going to create a new project in IntelliJ. So here we are. We click on Create New Project, and we're going to choose a Java FX project. Not a Java project, not any of these others, but we want a Java FX project. And you want your project SDK to be pointing to your Java JDK 11 installation. And then we're going to say Next, and we're going to give it a name. And I think I'm going to put this in a special directory that I've called Workshop. And then I'm going to do a slash, and I'm going to just say IntelliJ project. And I need to have, that's what I'm going to call it, IntelliJ first project. There we go. That'll do it. And its location will be here. And then we're going to finish. And it's going to generate all this code. And here it is in C Workshop. And I put it in C Workshop, but that's the way it goes. Okay, so here's my project in C Workshop. I have a main file, which you can see all of the Java imports are red because we have not added the library to the project yet. And then you have a controller class, which is not implementing initializable yet, and we will do that soon. And then we have the sample fxml, which is also having a hard time because the libraries aren't included. So the first thing we're going to do, or the next step is, on number 2, we're going to make sure the path to FX variable is set. And we do that in File, Settings, Path Variables. And so let's go look at that setting. And now for the Windows machine, you do it under the File menu. For the actual Mac machine, instead of File, you go to the words IntelliJ that are over here on the far left, and then you look for Appearance and Behavior. And that will come up, and you go down to the Path Variables Settings, and this is where you will add a variable, and you'll type it in. You'll say path _to _fx. You can see I've already added it, but I'm going to try to add it again. And then you click on that folder, and you go look, and you find where you have your JDK 11 installation, and you will select the lib directory, and then you would press OK. And as you can see, you'll get the results that look like this. Okay, and therefore this variable path2fx is set. All right, that will not compile or fix any of your code. Once again, that variable is useful for you when you do the transfer of the project to an evaluator. They will have the same variable, and therefore they can easily have it pointing to their FX11 installation. All right, so the next step is going to be, we're going to add the lib directory for JavaFX to our project. So let's do that now. I do File, Project Structure, and then I go to Libraries. And I see right now in this project I have nothing there. And so I click on the plus, and I say Java. And it's going to ask me to show it where on the machine it is. And I have it stuffed here in my Java 11 folder in JavaFX SDK 1102. This is the lib directory that I want it to point to. And so I click on OK, and it says it will be added to this project. And there it is. It shows me the classes. And so that's good. And then we should see that now it recognizes the JavaFX library. And you can look here as well, and you can see that I have it here. All of the JavaFX libraries are included. All right, and so what is the next step that we need to do? Looking at that, our next step is we are going to add the VM options, which is this long line here, which talks about the module path, and it points to the path2fx that we created. And notice how I've got these curly brackets here. And then we're going to give it some modules to add: the JavaFX XML, the controls, and the graphics. All right, so let me get our IntelliJ back up, and then let me actually select that line so that I can easily paste it in. And then when I say the VM options, the virtual machine options are for when you're running your program. Now over here in the upper right corner, you'll see there'll be a box that shows all of the mains that you can run. And right now I only have this one main file in sample that is set up to run. And so I go here and I edit that configuration. And you will see here there is a VM options box. Now in Mac it's a little different, but it's still there. But you see we're talking about the sample.main, which is what I want, and I'm going to place this line, the dash, that's two dashes, module dash path, and then the variable path2fx, and so that's signified by a $sign with the open curly bracket, path2fx, close curly bracket, and then a space, and then dash add modules with a space, and then I have the three modules, and you notice there is no space between the comma and the next module, and that's very important. Otherwise, it will get very confused. Okay, and so all I have to do is say, all right. Hi there. I wanted to point out something that has changed with IntelliJ as far as the VM options go. You're going to notice when you go up here to set the VM options and you go to main, edit configurations, now in the latest versions, let me go back. In the latest versions, I have IntelliJ 2020.3 here, but evidently in 2020.2 and beyond, they've made a change here for this stuff. So when you go into edit configurations, you'll see there is no VM options up here anymore. There actually is, but it's hidden. And it's hidden here in the modify options section. So you would click on modify options, and then you need to check the add or select the add VM options selection, and that will pop up this little VM options box. And then of course you can drop in your VM options that I prescribe in the other webinar, and then you click OK, and then you should be able to go ahead and run your sample application, and everything should come up without errors. Here it is here to show you that it was happening. So that's what I wanted to leave you with, an update, and we'll talk to you later. I click on OK, and now I do believe my next step is, we got to make the controller implement initializable. So I come in here for my controller. Now, why do I have to do this? Controller has to implement an interface. And what is an interface? An interface is a list of methods that if you implement, if you're a class and you implement that interface, you are promising that you will have those methods in your code. And it's very important because the JavaFX will test to see if your controller is an initializable. And if it is, then it will call your initialize method when you call fxmlloader.load. So we have to say implements, and that's a keyword, and then you put the interface that you want. And it's initializable. There it is. All right. Now this will cause your code and your controller to break. Why? Because you're not implementing the method that it wants you to implement. All right, and that's where we are with that. So let me see. I usually just click on this red light bulb and I select implement methods. And you'll see this is the contract. This is the interface that initializable has, and you have to say, yes, this method I am going to implement. And so you do that, and now it is happy. Now you don't have to put anything in there. We can put something in here like .out print line and say initialized. Okay, but we really don't have to write anything in there. It could call an empty method. However, you'll find as you go through your projects that there will be times that you want to set things or manipulate your GUI before the project shows your GUI, before it is realized. But there we go. Okay, so now I do believe our next step is to run the program. Let's check and see. Step 6 is do a test run. So this is where we actually get to run it. We have the main configuration set up with the virtual options. You have the library set. All right, there it is. The lib directory is set, so it should be able to point to that. And we have the path2fx variable all set up in our program. So we click on run and we wait for my machine to churn as it does, and it will eventually compile the code and attempt to run it. And so you can see the progress down here. It's running, and now we're just waiting for it to come up, and it's going to come up on a separate screen, and I will have to bring it over. And here it is. So there it is. Hello world. Here is our project right here. It's empty because we haven't added anything, but there it is. Now we know that we are running with JavaFX, and you can see actually here's that virtual machine options that we put in. It's running the dash module path, and the path to FX is set to this directory. And then here's the add modules command, and then it does a bunch of other stuff that to initialize the main when you run it within IntelliJ. And you can see here on this line we have the initialized string that we printed out. So it actually called this when it brought up the program. So there we go. So we can close this now. And I do believe our next task that we have set up is we're going to add a button and a label. Then we're going to add the button handler and label FX ID. And then we're going to write some code to just get this working. And so let's go in here in the FXML. Now, this is a grid pane. I usually like to work with anchor panes. And the grid pane is good to mess around with too, but I'm actually going to switch this to an anchor pane. And that's probably going to cause it some problems, especially if I can't type it out. And then we're going to change that to anchor pane. Okay, looks good. And maybe I should just take this out entirely. Yes, I'm causing too much confusion. Just ignore that I did that. And then we're going to go to the embedded scene builder. Ooh, and it doesn't like that. Oh boy. Okay, so let's go back here and let's put that grid pane back in. There we go. I just undid everything. And then we can go to the scene builder and do this. And we can delete our grid pane, which is what I should have done in the first place. Okay, I can remove it. Then I'm going to add an anchor pane. And the reason why I like to add an anchor pane is then I don't have to add any grids or manage with any stuff. In the anchor pane, the widgets are anchored straight to where they should be. I don't have to worry about the moving thing. I go to controls. I'm going to take a button and drop it here. I'm going to take a label and drop it here. Now, there were two things I have to do, which I have to create an on-action handler for the button, and I have to create an FXID for the label. And so I do that here by going to the Code tab, and for the FXID, I'll just call this the label. You can't put spaces in your FXID, so don't do that. Make sure it's all one word, however you type it out. So I got to make sure that there are no spaces in that name, the label. And then I click on the button, and I don't have to give it an FXID because I'm not going to change the label or the color or anything else with the button, but I am going to give it an on action method. So on button action is what I'm going to call this. Okay, and once again, no spaces because this is going to go in your code. All right, so I've got the label has the FXID, the label, and the button has an on button action. And then I can go back to the text and I have to do two things. The first thing is I have to hover over this label, or maybe that's not working. Let me see where I can do it. Oop, there it goes. Oh, the controller is not specified. Okay, so I have to make sure that my Java FX controller is specified. So I say FX controller, and then we say, where does it live? It lives in sample, and then I do a dot, and then I call it controller. And there's my controller. So now I have my FX controller defined, and you'll notice I defined that on this top anchor pane, this top widget. It had gone away when I deleted the grid pane, so I had to bring it back. And it's always the very, very top child widget in the program. You have to define the FX controller. So there that is, and now it knows that this label does not exist in there. So I have to create the field, the label, and you will see it pops up in my controller code. Then I go back to the FXML and hover my mouse over the on button action, and it can't find that, so I have to create that method. So what we have done now is we have a method that we know fires when the button is clicked. So I'll do this just to make sure that we can see this. There's the button clicked. There's that. And then I'm going to take the label and I'm going to set the text to that. And I'm going to say, you clicked. There we go. That's my label. There we go. So I know that the button's been pressed, and then I am going to set the value of the label. And now we are ready to compile it. You can build and clean if you want, or if you press this, it should rebuild the application and then fire it up, and we'll see what it does. Now it's thinking, as it always does. It looks like it's run, and of course it's going to show up on the other screen, so I'll have to bring it over. Here you see it says it was initialized. Here it is. I had to widen it up because I don't have the right sizes set for the pane. But here we are at the button. Now when I press button, this method, this on action event, is going to fire because we set it in the FXML. So when I press the button, you can see the label gets set. You clicked. So once again, those are the steps that we take just to set up a Java FX11 project. Thank you very much for watching. And if you have any questions, please contact me at mark.kincaid@wgu.edu. Thank you very much.